Didn't see any. Donna, did you see any questions come in specifically?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Anyone want to ask a question in the Q&A? Hi, Idaho. You can ask anonymously in the chat if you all have questions about the Google Drive. Say hi to one another. Can't hear me. You're not supposed to see me right now, but if you can't hear me, um, or wanting to know where materials are, let me share with you. In the meantime, we're waiting for a question because usually we start triggering questions when I start babbling around and about and around. So let me share with you the Google Drive. I added a couple of things recently. So let me share my Zoom, and then looks like I should be sharing the Google Drive, right? Okay, so here we're going to go to the Lunch and Learn. I uploaded, let me see here. Let's come on. Okay, it's not wanting to open. Okay, here we go. Little delayed reaction there. I uploaded some GEPA information for both Talent Search and EOC. And for both EOC and Talent Search, I uploaded some letters of commitment. I believe I did somewhere here. Or here they are. Sample MOUs and letter of commitment that you can modify for both EOC and Talent Search as needed. So you've got some letters there. Yes, I knew I did something. You know, when you think you remember doing something and then you forget that you purposely did what you think is a good thing and you forget where you put it. Here's the EOC letter of commitment from agencies, from target schools, from your college, from maybe a GED program or maybe a target school if you're doing that. And then for Talent Search, the same thing. We got an MOU, a letter of commitment from a CBO, a community-based organization if you're a college. And then whether you're a college or agency, you need to get it from your target schools. Now, if you're an agency, you need to get something from your president, of course, or your president or the board of directors of your agency. All right, so you've got this information here. So you can check that out there if you want to modify, also an MOU. I also put, I believe in the talent search, someone had asked a question about breaking out with a target school nicely. So I put in here a sample talent search letter informing of non-target school status in the next competition, however you want to word it. So you may want to check it out. It's a nice little letter saying, basically, I can share it with you since we don't have any questions just yet. But if you're in this situation, let me make sure I share this, where for whatever reason they don't show need or they don't want you and you want to put it in writing, it's just a little information saying, basically, thanks for allowing us to support your students in the previous funding cycle or cycles, and then letting them know as you're preparing for the next grant competition. And, a little bit of that, we have to, start documenting demonstrated academic need and institutional access to participants. Because in this case, if I remember correctly, they were being told that you will no longer have access to participants. Now, having come from the Boys and Girls Club, which is a community-based agency, we never really had access to students directly. We got it later, but we were able to survive because we saw the students after school. I do realize that many of you based at a college campus may not have that, or maybe you can establish that connection with a local community-based organization so that you can go around the target schools. But in this case, obviously, it was not going to work. Based on our internal review and current program data, we regret to inform you that the school will not be included as a target school. The decision is grounded in one or more of the following. So here we put from the regulations, almost like blaming the regs. It's not us, it's them. And access. So it, kind of ties in where it's like, oh, it's not us. We love you, but, we got to have this. We don't, this decision was not made lightly, yada, yada, yada. Should you have any questions, contact us. So, just little something which you can tweak depending. Maybe it's insufficient evidence. Maybe they love you so much. Maybe it's someone you could tweak this, and maybe it's a school that wanted to be part of it. And you initially said, yeah, this is great. And then you started pulling the data and realized, no, this is not great. We like them. They want to give us access. So of course you would remove that reference to, challenges accessing students. It's been my experience that the schools that want you the most and are most cooperative, you're struggling showing the academic need. And it's the other way around. The schools that show the need say, no, that's okay, thanks. We don't want you meeting with the students during the class days, too disruptive, yada yada, all that good stuff. And the letter should really come, this type of letter should come from, it can come from both the director, but it really should come from the principal investigator at the college or agency, whoever is ultimately over the program. And Teresa, I don't know if you want to speak to that, because this is something that would come from you if when you were back at your projects and you had project directors, but ultimately you're the principal investigator, correct?
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, when I moved up to associate vice chancellor, I was the PI. Well, I wasn't the PI necessarily, but I was the person who the director reported to. But I delegated the PI role back to them, but I still oversaw it. So I would have actually written a letter on behalf
Right.
of the university. And then in a different situation, when I was the director, um, I reported to the provost. And so, I mean, yeah, we reported to the provost. And so she would do it for us. So it just depends. I think the higher the level, sometimes it just makes it easier, um, to move it forward if they're willing to do it, if they're willing to write it. So,
Correct. Yeah. So, depending on what's appropriate,
yeah.
modify this letter. Again, you may have to change the specific reasoning, but I do believe it's best to document that in writing, even if they've told you, very harshly or whatever, go ahead and have it documented in writing that you're breaking up, basically.
Yeah.
Even if though it's been spoken to, a lot of people told me, well, it's a verbal understanding. I said, let me tell you, they get mad or they say that can come back and say we were left out, you didn't tell us anything, or a whole new set of people. So you can, bring out this letter and say, oh, no, 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 we did not mean, here's the letter we sent to so and so. So, CYA, whenever you deal with target schools, administration, superintendents, you always have to act as though it's going to come back on you. So make sure you do the CYA. Now, someone has put a really great question. I knew someone was going to ask this, so thank you for asking this. How does the latest TRIO funding announcement from Friday affect how we continue with writing? Well, I'm going to post something tomorrow. People are asking specifically for SSS, Teresa, and I meant to send you something that I'm working on to put out there. But um, well, the SSS awards will be made because their funding was approved with 2025 funding. Now, it doesn't mean that they're not getting their whole 5 years. They could be initially awarded because that's already been approved. But it's always been the case, correct me if I'm wrong, Teresa, but it's always been the case that whenever you get funded with a 5-year award, it's not a done deal because this is discretionary funding. So although you may have been, congratulations, you have 5 years of funding. Well, it's 5 years of funding if the money is put into the budget. So it's
Correct.
always been a case that our funding could be pulled at any time, if you think about it. It's just
Correct.
very, very right, Teresa. It's just very, yeah. I mean, don't talk about it, moving forward, definitely. So on the SSS folks, and I'll get to specifically how it impacts us, as I believe, my assessment of it, and that's why I'm glad Teresa's here to make sure I'm on the right track. The awards will be made, um, but for how long do you keep that funding is the question, correct, Teresa? I think it's for I think, would you say the first year? Hi, everyone. The first year it would be in a way approved, but then it would be the second, third, and fourth and fifth year that is up in the air for SSS, correct?
Right, definitely. And that's how it's been always. It's just there's such a level of high uncertainty that it just looks different this time, or it may feel different, which is definitely we definitely want to acknowledge the feeling that people have. But it's always been this way. It just feels different because of the uncertainty. So yeah, that's always been the case historically.
So now with talent search, the issue is that it would be for funding that starts after 2026. So because the competition is
Right,
labeled 2026.
right,
So that is up in the air.
right,
It is up in the air. And as you will probably hear during COE's conference call, and also what we're going to be telling you is that, again, the president's budget is a recommendation.
right.
It's not a done deal by any means. That letter went to Senator Collins, who, she's no fan. So if anything, she'll, and she's always been a big supporter of TRIO. Initially, I thought that came from her office. No, 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 that went to her office. So,
Right.
she's already saying, oh, heck no, heck no. for that. But right now it's in the House of Representatives. And they're looking at the recommendations. And I just I don't know what to tell you. I've been more right than wrong, but I have a feeling that some of these won't be they're not gonna, like I said, it's not a done deal. So we need to lobby our representatives and also make sure y'all, and I keep seeing this over and over again. And just recently on Facebook where people were posting, we need to do this, but for low income first gen students. And I want to cringe because it's potential first generation students. You want to use that language. I know it's wordy, but you have to use potential first generation students, right? Teresa, do you want to state kind of why we shorten it? We can talk first gen to each other, but when we talk to people advocating for TRIO, Teresa, why should we be saying potential first generation college students?
Well, I think first of all, it's they're not first gen yet until they actually get into. They're potentially a first generation college graduate, and so we're speaking to the fact that they're not there yet, and therefore the support is needed at this point. That's really what my understanding is. There anything different for you, Lisa?
Well, to me, first gen sometimes refers to first generation American.
Correct. Yes, you're right. I've got.
Right. And that could be assumptions be made that they're for a certain ethnic group or ethnicity. And so I know it's not, but I see us doing that. And it's because you and I say first gen, first gen, first gen. But Teresa's right. This is for potential first generation college students and graduates. So it's wordy, but make sure when you talk to people, make sure your campus press releases, it's about potential first generation students, no matter what. But a lot of us shorten it and say first gen, first gen, first gen. Do not say first gen. Use the whole thing. Okay, because that's very, very important. That goes back to the law, back to the regulations. And Teresa, when they said it's a relic and whatever, and it's woke, and we're not, so it's like you want to say, no, that's not us. Let me tell you, we may say first gen to each other, but we don't mean it in that manner. What we actually mean is this. So that's real important. So to get to your question, it is up in the air. I do know that it's a recommendation. Like Teresa said, we've always been on shaky ground. It's always been discretionary funding, always. It's just now that it's been more, publicized. There's a spotlight on it. It's zeroed out. I believe this happened in the 80s with Ronald Reagan. He zeroed it out as well. We do have a lot of support from, this is where your colleges, your universities need to, get their lobbyists up and working for us, but make sure they say, low income and potential first generation college students or graduates, which would be very, very helpful. So I don't know. I mean, I'm going on with the writing. You've got to collect the data now. I mean, let's hope for the best. Right? Hope for the best. If this gets approved and maybe comes out September, later October, wherever, don't wait and ruin your whole holiday season with yay, we've been approved, but oh my gosh, now I got 30 days, 45 days to get data. Go ahead and get it now. Work off of the old 2021 RFP. That's what we're doing, moving ahead. We're moving ahead as though this is going to happen. I guess what I meant to say, Teresa, this time what I think is that in the years past, not only have we been able to say, no, you're not going to cut us, you're actually going to give us a little bit more money. I think this time will be the first time that they'll cut us some, and we won't get level or increased funding, which could mean some of the other which could mean less availability of at EOC or town search programs, or the possibility of some of the programs maybe through negotiations. Well, okay, we won't cut you completely, but you got to let somebody go. That I don't know who's going to go, what program would go, or just have very few new awards given, but continue with what we have. What do you think, Teresa? That's just my assessment.
And I agree. And then I also like to add that if you think about it, there are going to be some people who decide that they really don't want to move forward just because of what's happening. And so what my argument is and would be if I were actually at the university still is I'm going to compete because there may be less people to compete with.
That's true. That's
You know what I'm
true.
saying? It's in my mind, that is a strategy potentially. If there is a decrease in the numbers that are actually funded, I still want to be in the game. I still want to make sure that oh, Siri is talking to me.
Wants to get in on it.
Make sure that I'm still in the game. And, I think that that's also another strategy to consider in the competitiveness of the grant writing process. It just makes it more competitive when they decrease the funding.
You're right, because I think a lot of people that were thinking about going for new are saying, oh, heck no. No, 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 no. And really, they should be when they do the budget. Even if, Teresa, even if everything was great the way it was before, when you try to write, and some of y'all were trying to write for new grants to serve more students, here's a challenge. Get that first year budget that is here in Excel. Raquel, was always like, why do you give folks stuff for free? I said, believe me, once they plug the numbers in here, 90% of them will come back and say, we can't afford this brand new program because our college from the get-go is going to have to put money into it. Okay, and these are just fake salaries and all that stuff. But if you're going for new funding, you should be unless your college is from the get-go going to provide matching funds, not just in kind, but dollars, not only in the first year, but in subsequent years, that's already a competition. People say, oh, heck no. Add on, well, you know what? We don't even know if there might be I have to say that. I mean, I'm being truthful, right? I can't predict the future 100%. I think there will be. I think more so there will be than not. But at this point, Teresa, I'm not wooing any new clients by saying, hey, here's a grant competition.
Correct. Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Because they can't afford it. And on top of that, why am I going to bring them into something that might not ever even happen? That situation.
Mhm.
So that's tough. So that's going to drop. And then you've seen on Facebook, some people said, my college just says the heck with it. I can't handle this, not knowing if we're going to have trio funds. So we're just going to wrap it up now
Yeah.
and just kiss, bless it and say goodbye. Because Talent Search and EOC are hard sells because of the budget. And I don't know if you agree with me or not, Teresa, but with universities and colleges, these are, with SSS and McNair, you can say these are actual students right now
Correct.
that we can provide direct services to help right now work on our colleges, retention, graduation, academic achievement rates, right? And then you switch over to Talent Search and EOC. Oh, well, these are folks that may never even darken our doorstep. And so it's more of a community, almost like, well, out of the goodness of their heart, because the majority of these students will not come to their campus. So you see, with everything going the way it is, it's a hard sell. It's like, well, why? Well, I need money for more direct services. I wish I could do this, but we can't afford it anymore, right, Teresa?
Mhm.
No?
Mhm. Yeah.
So
And then the other side of it is, if you understand what the strategic priorities are, like the university does a strategic plan. And so, if you have to, make the argument that you feel like you should still have EOC and talent search, then, find it in the strategic priorities where they talk about community involvement, making a difference in the community, and just, the element of giving and being a part of the community. And that could be part, in your statement would basically be that you're advocating to support that, to continue to support that work. So again, there's a lot of different lenses to look at it from. But I definitely believe that you should be aware of all of the opportunities, and then make the best decision. 'Cause sometimes you may decide, I'm not going to fight this. I don't have any fight in me. There were times when I felt that way. But then there were other times where I was just like, I think that we have an opportunity here to still do it, and we'll make it work. So,
well, and so that's one of the reasons we think, like Teresa was saying, some people are closing up their tent and going on home and saying, sorry, can't do it. And the new people are being, shying away from it. And I'd be the first person to tell a new project for so many reasons, even before this. Like, if you think that was bad, what about this? Oh, yeah, we're not going to go through that time and effort to do that. But you're existing, let's go for it. And if your college is going to support you, because you got to have their support. And that's so sad if they're not able to. And it comes down to the finances. Y'all see the budget, y'all see how much money, if you keep everybody on board, how much you start running out of money because your institutional salaries increase, mandated increases perhaps. and insurance are not going to keep up with the funding. And I believe, Teresa, I strongly believe if we survive, it's going to be level funding, for a while.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get even your little 4%, kiss that goodbye. So you got to have a backup plan as to who's going to pay the difference. So that's why I would strongly recommend you take that 1 year budget and add 4 more years to it, plug in a 3 or 4% increase for salaries that you think your institution or agency is going to pay for cost of living increases. And then possibly, I got to be for real, another 10 to 12% increase in insurance costs across the year. So here we're talking about 12% increase in fringe per year and 3 or 4%. So look at how much 16, there's no way they're ever going to give us a 16% increase on funding. And so, plan that out. Please plan that out, and please tell someone, FYI, no, again, more CYA when you come back to me and say, why didn't you tell me this? People don't really realize it, Teresa, in reality, because, it's getting harder to hire people or keep people around. So we get the carryover. So it gets hidden with carryover. So y'all may be thinking, what? I have all this money left over. I got money to burn. I got money to burn. Well, that means you lost people along the way, which we're not supposed to do. It happens. So some of us have been living, which I did, kind of under this false sense of security, financial security. And really, if you kept everybody on board, you should be scraping the bottom of the barrel to make every year, the money last every year. I've noticed in the chat, thanks, Gayla, and Leticia. Yes, and not only when you talk to your your college and everyone getting them, and you go talk to your House of Representatives and send your letters and phone calls. We've been in flyers. We tell you to use potential first generation college students or graduates in your proposal. Yes, you want to do the same thing. Don't shorten it. And if you really want to, after you let the reader know, in your opening statement in your needs section, make sure you can switch to say talent search eligible, talent search eligible, talent search eligible throughout the rest of the proposal. Okay, say low income and potential first generation college students initially, or maybe once every section, but then from then on, use the term EOC eligible, talent search eligible. Save space, and also it keeps you from using potentially the wrong, not the wrong, but the shortened version. Okay, how can you communicate to your staff or college that the new grant may only have 3 people instead of 4? You show them the budget. I mean, you can't afford something, you can't afford it. You can't afford it because that's why you got to do the budget, and you say, due to the budget, this is the issue. It's a budget thing. Now, if they want to contribute, or if people there want to take a pay cut and donate their salary towards supplies or to something else, let's have it. We can do it if you take a cut in pay, or we don't do this or we don't do that. It's all a budget issue, and that's why the budget is done first, so you can let people know ahead of time. You can try to make plans, maybe consult, maybe split people, maybe just, but that's how you communicate with the budget. It's no secret. Here's what we get. Here's what we probably will get. Right now, we're basing our budgets off of what you get today minus carryover. Whatever you're getting today for how many students you're supposed to serve, exactly the same, minus any carryover. A client asked me, oh, I thought when we wrote again, for another cycle, I could ask to serve more students, and more money. And I'm like, no, it clearly says there, I forget, is it page 21, I think, maybe, why does that remind me? But in the RFP, it specifically states, if you're a continuation grant, you are to write for, back in 2021, of course, whatever your 2020 budget was, the last year, the funding, whatever that is, with how many people you're supposed to serve. Okay. And you're not supposed to ask for any more. So they were like, well, we want to serve more students. I said, well, you can't. I mean, if you put your budget to serve more students than your budget is, well, they said, well, why don't I keep the same amount of money but serve more students? Well, then you're watering down the cost of participant. And they purposely want to keep that cost of participant consistent, no matter if you are serving 1,800 students, or just 500. The cost for participant needs to remain the same. Now you could always write to reduce your numbers, like, oh, well, I don't know if we can do 1,000. Maybe we can do 800. You can do that, but then you've got to give up what 1,000 to 800 is 200. The cost for participants is about 550, Teresa, I think. So that's 200 times 550. So you can't ask for any more than, whatever it would be, to serve 800 students at 550, you can't do that. You can always write down, but then you're going to lose money. But on a current grant, you can't ask for any more money and you can't ask to serve any more students because then you mess with that cost per participant.
Right.
So, right, Teresa, the budget is the way to go ahead now and make those decisions.
Correct. Yep, I agree.
It's tough. It's not fun. It's the worst part. But yeah, and if I have to, and I hate to say this, because I know, easy for me to say, but looking at the paper when I run the numbers and knowing who I need to show being full-time or even if they're part-time service delivery folks in both EOC and Talent Search are my advisors or specialists, as you would say. The first position that usually has to go is administrative assistant, or it goes to part-time, or it's completely eliminated. Sorry, but that's the case. And people say, well, don't you lose points if you don't have an admin? Nope, but you might lose points if you don't have enough people assigned to work directly with students. That administrative part gets swallowed up by the director, or maybe the college can pay for that position. Okay, Teresa, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, no, that's correct, and I agree.
It's tough. It's tough. So let's see what else is in here.
And I'll add something.
Go ahead.
Let me add something from the SSS. So, and I think one of the things that we want to remember is where we are right now when it comes to the SSS competition. From what we had heard when we actually submitted, soon thereafter, the feedback we had gotten is that it would be June of this year when we found out about SSS. So I feel like we submitted very early this last competition. And you may have said this, before in the sessions, but it's relative to some of the anxiousness that people have is because we're still waiting for SSS, but we really reasonably we normally don't hear about SSS until June, July anyway. So just it's not abnormal for us not to have gotten the information at this
yeah,
point.
definitely, definitely. And
Mhm.
yeah, you're absolutely right. I know it's sometimes been the middle of July,
Right.
and when everything was great, supposedly.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
not weird. It was just weird that they made us turn it in
Yeah.
July of last year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I'm sharing a timeline, which is very similar. This is for Talent Search, but also for EOC. So we, started earlier than this, but by March, we were like beginning to collect the target school data. So again, back to the question, is there going to be a competition? I hope so. I pray there will be, but I've got to go ahead and collect the data now. And some of my clients are going directly to the schools, like having the schools do it for them. I said, no. You have this data. Look at 23-24 school year and go to the state agency. It's on the website and start looking at those report cards. Teresa, what did they use in your state? What was the North Carolina or, here in Texas?
It was report card.
Report. I mean, maybe some places you kind of have to be, what's the word? Politically, diplomatic and let them know. And some places that, well, we need to get an MOU just to pull the data. And I'm like, go ahead, get your MOU, do what you got to do, but don't wait on them. That's like a formality, like a more of a symbolic thing. But Teresa, can log on to the Texas Education Agency and start pulling all that data, the majority of the target school data that is required for the grant. Now, there's some things like the rigorous secondary school program of study, the lack of support, the problems that socioeconomic problems faced by foster care and homeless youth at the schools, maybe confirming the true number of counselors to teachers.
Right.
And the big one is about because most of us are in states where a rigorous secondary school program of study is mandated to be offered. So we can't say, oh, poor us. None of our target schools students have access to a rigorous secondary school program of study. We can't say that in Texas. So we have to count on the second part of that question where it says, or the target schools provide a lack of support. You won't find that anywhere on any website. And that might be hard to get from the schools directly unless you can get permission to talk to their advisors and counselors and perhaps give them, and I think I uploaded a very detailed, which, like I said, pick and choose from those questions, target school survey where you get that sort of qualitative information in quotes. I get that. But do not wait on that MOU to be finalized so that they can pull the data for you. You're going to have to do it side by side or do your own pulling, look at their stuff, but your stuff is actually, don't wait on that because we have to get some feedback right now because this is the time to make decisions about what target schools are possibly going to continue. And then there's a fine line about how many have to continue. And also a discussion about how many prior experience points you have. So you can say, no, I really love that target school. I know they no longer show a need in table 5. And that's the one table where they're doing better than the state. So I'm okay with losing a point there because I know I've got 15 prior experience points. So that leaves me with 14 for stuff that I'm not expecting, right? But if you're wanting to bring in new folks in, new target schools in, again, if they're not showing need across the board in all those tables, you can't invite them to the party. I mean, they can be a non-target school if it's in the target area and you can still get your numbers from there, but they shouldn't be added as an official target school unless you're willing to give up points, because they will specifically look to make sure that every single target school is showing individual need when compared to state or national rates, not just the average. Okay, so now's the time to collect that information. Don't be waiting on the schools. You may be putting yourself in a situation where you're stuck waiting to get the qualitative feedback or quotes regarding the level of rigorous secondary school program of study academic support until the fall. And so that might be pushing it. I don't know if you wanted to add anything to that, Teresa, about when, they need to get this data.
No, I just echo what you say. Yeah, I mean, it's just important to go ahead and get it. Better now than later. It's better to be informed about what your options are early on, so that you don't have to wait till, so that you don't have the pressure and the stress when it's time to compete.
Yeah,
So just being proactive is important.
definitely. And the target schools can't get you census data. So you can get that yourself, get someone on campus, get a graduate student that, send them to the census data, there's two specific tables you need to get information about the percentage of low income families and the target for both, for EOC too, in the target area. But you first have to define what your target area is. Just like, okay, we're going to keep the same target schools. Wait a minute, let's look at our target area. Is there an area for some reason you're thinking about giving up? Well, then that means those schools have to go with it. Do we have to reassess? And then, is our target area one city, one county? Start pulling the data for that. And you got to make sure the year of the target data that you collect, you got to make sure it's the most recent available data for your area. Depending where you're at, we might be able to get what they call updates, census updates. We could say American Community Survey update, maybe it's 2023 or 2022, but it may be such a rural area that you have to, the latest is, so definitely, I believe the latest is 2020. Right, Teresa, the census was done in 2020. So definitely just Gayla, these sources you put up, they would have to be no later than 2020. And then I'd still have to tell the reader, because the reader's going to be reading in 2026, going, wait a minute, this is 6 years old. But actually, where my place is so rural, this is the latest. You have to let them know. Just don't say we're rural at the very beginning. And so that means census data is going to be the latest is 2020 because that's for our area. You told me there, but I want you to tell me after every single table across the whole needs section, whenever there's a date you're putting in there of data that's older than 3 years, you want to make sure to go ahead and repeat yourself and say, this is the latest available data for all comparison areas. Like, hey, I checked. And you might even take it, what we do is make sure to take it to the next level and state, let's say it's data, maybe it's census data, and I can only get it for 2020. It's going to be 2026. So I put, census data, whatever, 2020, I put a comma, compiled or retrieved on May 5th, 2025. And I do that. So I pull what the data, what period of time the data is for, but more importantly, when I collected it or retrieved it. And then I always put, please note, this is the latest available data for each target area. Okay. Very, very important. Okay. But definitely, I think the last census was 2020. So it has to be data that is no older than 2020 for sure. Let's see here. We have a question. Can you add the administrative position, say at 25% time to create the slot, and then assuming that you will have other grants to allocate the cost of the other programs to try to get them up to full-time, or this create questions that we don't want to be asked for the readers? You know what, this whole thing, including them in there, I mean, include them from the get-go if you can afford enough full-time people or people that are advisors to work with the students. And that's what I'm saying. When you go into your budget and you put in how much you have to pay, what your fringe benefits are, and still have supplies and a little bit of money, you have to show you're buying computers. They don't care if you just bought computers now. You have to show that you'll either continue or even put the slot in there to get that. So what you might want to do is not include them in your initial budget to make sure it looks like you have enough advisors, to do caseloads of students. I mean, think about it. EOC at the least is 850, right? I mean, that means I'm lucky to have 2 full-time people with a caseload of what, 425 each? If you can make it where you have an admin even at 50%, as long as you've got full-time people as much as possible to show you can make it work. And then talent search, at least my thing is 2 people, 250 each students to equal the 500 and 1 director. I'm happy if I could have 3 full-time people in talent search. I'm ecstatic with that, but if your budget allows you to, if you're already split, the only way I was ever able to have some sort of administrative or clerical assistance in the budget is because I was split as a director across 5 grants. And I was able to do my salary, at 20%. So that allowed me to promote someone to be a lead advisor or project coordinator. And it allowed us to have actually 1 full-time person split 20%, just like I was split. So the only people that were split across our grants were me at 20% each and the full-time administrative assistant 20% each on each grant. I was able to do that. You may not be able to do that. So all this stuff that you're talking about, maybe I'll get other funding. Well, then keep them off of it, the proposal budget. And when you redo, remember, this is not going to be your final budget. We got to get this past the readers to show you have enough people power to provide the services directly to students. We have computers. We have the poor director is going to be the admin assistant pretty much, just doing everything and anything so that the advisors can get out there, identify, recruit, and provide services that the director's coordinating, monitoring, making sure it gets in the database, running reports, developing the curriculum, doing the travel, all that stuff. So those folks can run around to all the target schools. So you got to make it look that way. And when you finally get refunded and they ask you to submit your annual budget, that's when, Ray, you can do this. You can say, okay, now I've bought some time. I've got 8 months to figure out how I can put this admin position back into the grant. By then, maybe we got some other funding, or maybe we can shift things around, or maybe I can convince my program officer that we can do it with 1.5 people. We can go back and forth. You can't go back and forth with the readers. So I'd hate for you to lose points because it didn't look like you had sufficient personnel to make this happen from a reader, because you can't go back and negotiate with them. So cover yourself there. Make sure you have enough people with the back of your mind thinking, okay, now I bought some time because we're turning this in. And now it's going to be 6-7 months before I have to, hopefully provide a new budget. By then things change. And maybe we'll have additional funding. So to me, that position of an admin at 25% is something that I might add on after I get funding in my real budget, but not on the proposal budget. Okay. So let's see here. So that's the chat. Let me get back to the questions. For some reason, I'm having a hard time looking at the questions, Teresa. Do you see the questions? Let me see here. Let me get to the questions.
Yes, I can see the questions. I couldn't find my Zoom.
I can find my Zoom, but I can't find the question. I can see the chat. Let me see if I turn off take
So
the chat.
Gayla, she just basically she provided some data sources for the talent search, but she also they're more specific um to Texas.
Oh,
So
I see it now.
that's
I
yeah.
see it now.
Okay.
I thought it was
Okay.
in the chat. Thank you, thank you. And yes, if those are in your last proposal, then yeah. So keep in mind, y'all, update. You may go to the same place. So look at your last proposal and look at those sources. They all should be the 2018, like like it was mentioned there. But what you want to do is maybe go back to that source and see if you can get updated information. And please update the year, and always put that disclaimer that hey, this is this is the latest available data for each comparison area. And remember, your comparison areas are going to look, how should we say, possibly have different timing because your state agency graduation rates may be in a different time frame than your national. There's
Mm.
no way that you can get the same timing or use this, very rare to use the same source with the same time frame for all your comparison areas. Okay. Any other questions, y'all? It's 12:42 Central Time. Let me see. We have another one here. As a project director, I currently do not have a caseload and all my participants are extra. Okay. I wonder if some program directors are serving students. Will the two EOC advisors appear to not have enough support to the readers? Well, and again, this question, I guess, is completely about EOC, I'm guessing. You could state two people, 425 might be a little overwhelming to the reader. And that's why I always have to stress that as a director, I go ahead and do the first part, 2 for 500.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. Oh, this is a talent search. Okay. So talent search. Yeah. I like 2 for, 250. Yeah. Oh, EOC. Okay. But EOCs have to serve 850. That's why I'm getting confused. A minimum of 850. Okay. So it has to be a minimum of 850. So, two advisors, that'd be 425. So that's where I have to let the reader know that as the director, I do the initial informing the community. I do the administrative piece about, establishing the database. I make sure the services are entered into the database somehow. I run the reports. And in addition to that, you may say that you maybe have 100 clients that are possibly the non-college ready clients, because let's be for real, we usually have a smaller percentage of non-college ready clients, which would be the high school dropouts or those students that are currently in a GED program. And that's how I've seen it, Teresa, most of the time, that when I look at the percentages where everybody is, we have a whole bunch of people in EOC that are on existing college students, which we can serve. Then we have a whole bunch of high school grads with no post. And then we have the very small population of dropouts and GED students. So you could state that the project director also takes a lead with that. So maybe serves 100. So that would make it what? 850, if that's the number, minus 750, then divide it. And so you get that technical where you answer in the plan of operation the time commitment of the staff. You make it clear, not only the plan to deliver services from the get-go, but you repeat it in the next question where you show them the breakdown. And I believe that when you show that breakdown and what the duties and responsibilities are initially, and I see the director taking the lead on the administrative portion, then I believe that's pretty sufficient. What do
yeah.
you think,
She has
Teresa?
1,000. The anonymous
Oh,
listed 1,000 participants.
yeah. So see, I would
Yeah.
I would say that the director has a caseload of a 150 or possibly 200 of a certain population. So they wouldn't be extra. It would be, I would say that maybe 400, well, whatever, 1,000, give them 400 and 400, that's 800, right? And then, or 850, something like that, kind of bring it down to as though they just had to work with 850. And that remaining group of students would be the director's responsibility. And it could be your focus, but it could be anybody, anyone that you can grab, you can say the focus. So I think that would be very appropriate. Okay.
Mm.
I would feel good about that breakdown.
And even and I'll just add, even though our director didn't have any people assigned to her or him, depending upon who it was, um, they still had a caseload per se, simply because they were at the central office on campus, and so any drop-ins or whatever, so it did equal up to about 100 to 150 that they worked with, because when people walked in the door, everybody else was out in the field at their sites, at their EOE, EOC sites. So, I think that, it's definitely advantageous to include that caseload, even if for whatever reason it does not end up being, it may be that the other two advisors can manage the 500, but I think it's important it's okay to list it, and also just, think about what the target population is, just echoing what Lisa said. Yeah.
We have a couple of questions here. So is the one-page summary I sent out this morning in the blog post, you mentioned workforce readiness, parental rights might be implications for the future. How do you see those fitting into talent search? I see those possibly mainly the workforce readiness and the AI piece that will probably be part of the competitive preference priorities, the CPPs. I strongly believe that they'll have some say in that. Do you agree, Teresa, that probably was
Yeah. And I hadn't thought about the parent rights, but I mean, parent involvement for talent search,
parental?
that's what that is to me. That's what I would call it, is parent involvement.
So if I were to kind of have to crank this out real quick and I'd match it up to what they're looking for, I'd probably say 3 CPPs, one on workforce readiness, one on AI, and one on parental involvement. So think about those things. Gayla, do you put the language, this is the latest data possible in every single table, or just one time before and after the data charts? No, every single table at the very bottom. Please note this is the latest available data for each, and I'm putting it in the questions. Latest available data. I can't type and talk at the same time. For each, and I put capital letters, oh my gosh, for each comparison area. Okay. Along with, for each one, I'm going to tell them when I pulled the data, even if it's for 2022, 2023, I pulled it May 5th, 2025. That's the day I retrieved it. And the one disclaimer at the very end of that table underneath the sources, please note in big bold letters, this is the latest available data for each comparison area. Okay, let's see here. So great questions, y'all. Great questions. Let's see here. I'm trying to remember. Oh, for those of you that are writing multiple grants, what I wanted to say is that make sure that you do a separate data collection spreadsheet for each of your grants. Let me know if you're writing you currently have 2 or 3 talent search grants or EOCs. I received one spreadsheet, Teresa, that had for 3 different target areas. It was all on one. And I was like, I can't tell, you know what I'm saying? Because they're supposed to be for different target areas. We can write for more than one talent search or EOC from the same agency, the same institution, but they have to serve different target areas. Okay. So what I'm concerned about is maybe this one grant is actually serving the same target area, but different target schools, and that's not going to work. So there needs to be, like we did in Fort Worth, one of our grants did the north side of Fort Worth. That was a target area. Another one was the south side of Fort Worth, the east side of Fort Worth. So when we pulled the census data for the percentage of low-income families in the target area, for example, when we had to pull it 3 separate ways because there was 3 different target areas, even though they're right next to each other. And so when you looked at our data charts next to each other, there was different numbers and percentages for the data spreadsheet. There's a different set of population number. There was a slightly different percentage of low-income families in each of the areas. So what I'm saying is you can't have the census data look exactly the same for all 3 grants. They have to be a little different because they're slightly different target areas, or they could be drastically different target areas like we had in San Antonio. Eagle Pass, San Antonio, and they were not connected, right? Just keep that in mind. And it is confusing as a reader when we're trying to on the spreadsheet check out to see if your target schools and your target area shows need, if you have 3 proposals, you put them on one spreadsheet, we can't do it that way. So I opened it and closed it, and I said, no, these need to be, you're writing 2 different town search grants, two town search grants, then they have to be separate spreadsheets, just like you would turn a separate needs section. And those numbers need to be different because they're supposed to be for different areas, even if they're connected, even if they're right next to each other, different neighborhoods, okay? Slightly different percentages. Any other questions? Let me see here. I'm trying to think what has also come up. The rigorous secondary school program of study, y'all. That's going to remain to be a headache. In the regulations, there are 6 different definitions. Those definitions we're stuck with again. You need to go and look at your current proposal for talent search to see in the needs section, it should have been clearly spelled out to the reader what was y'all's definition for rigorous secondary school program of study. And it can't be and right away directly, it can't be, oh, dual enrollment or what's the other one? College credit courses being taken or early college school enrollment, which kind of the same thing. It cannot be that unless that definition of being able to count dual enrollment or concurrent enrollment, whatever you call it, is part of buried in the definition as to what they say is the definition for what the state says is an honors program. So it could be, but and things have changed the last 5 years. Maybe their definition has changed. So I urge you in talent search, you should have been using that definition for your last APR that you just did. Okay. And so check it out. Do you want to use it? Is it still showing a need? Or do you need to switch gears and pick up one of the other definitions? In Texas, we're stuck with kind of the second one on what the state says is an honors program, and possibly the last one, number 6, which says, I'm paraphrasing, but students enrolled in 2 or more advanced placement courses that earn a 3 or higher, and that's tough to track. It's really tough, and it shows need, so much need that I tell clients, look, out of all these definitions, the only one that shows that you have a need for talent search and can get full points is this number 6. It's really low. And they're like, great, let's use that. And I said, okay, but I got to tell you, that means when you try to do your APR from now on, you've got to use that definition. Oh, we're never going to meet that. Exactly. So, do you want to get the points in the proposal and in the objective show that you're going to try to meet that and get full points, knowing that every 5 years you're never going to meet it and lose 1.5 points toward prior experience? I mean, to me, that's my recommendation, rather than lose more than 1.5 points in the need section, not showing need, and then in the objective section, losing another 2 or 3 points because you didn't have the need and they didn't think it was ambitious. So that to me up front, I would be losing more than if I went ahead and purposely picked something that I may not be able to meet in the future, just so that I can continue to exist to try my best to meet that objective, but not kill myself because I already knew that was going to be a stretch anyway. You know what I'm talking about, Teresa? You have to be strategic.
Definitely.
With that rigorous, because here in Texas, all the schools are supposed to provide that. So people go, oh yeah, well, regular, rigorous. So when I do my APR, hey, whoever graduated is also doing rigorous. Yay. Well, not so fast here. You probably might have been using the wrong definition because you're supposed to be using what the rigorous. And it's rare that you can use the same one on your APR because that means how did you show need in the proposal when you wrote it 5 years ago? There was supposed to be a difference and you're supposed to show the struggle. Usually definition number 1, and Teresa, I don't know if you have time to pull up the regulations and just that definition and put those in the chat if you don't mind. It's under the regulations where they talk about the definitions kind of in the middle of it. Just so you can see, it is in the RFP, the program application as well. But usually definition number one, and I'm paraphrasing, it says whatever the state says is rigorous, we'll take. Well, in Texas, they say regular equals rigorous. Great for my APR, terrible to gather to show need, right? And that's the other thing, besides the rigorous secondary school program of study. And I tell you this not to freak you out, but I tell you this so that you start working on it now, so you've got time to go back and forth and try to figure out, we've got to use a different definition, or let's have a discussion about it. These are choices that cannot be made at the last minute. If we take it to the regular diploma, remember in Texas, regular versus rigorous. Well, I'm screwed for the rigorous stuff, baseline, but my regular diploma, Texas is saying for that school is already at 96%. And, the readers are thinking anything in the 90s doesn't show need, even if the state's at, 99% and you're at 96%. Well, technically, we have a need. They're at 99, we're at 96, but it's so super high. So you probably this time around will struggle more with showing a need with the regular diploma, because they're letting everybody graduate. And it's going to be in the 90s. And then you've got to set an objective on that. So that gives me more pressure to kind of do the rigorous secondary school program of study, pick the hardest one so I can show the need, because I probably lost it with the regular. Okay. And so we'll get those definitions to you just so you can see what we're talking about, but you need to go back in your proposal and dig that information out. That's kind of a thorn in my side, the regular, trying to show that there's a need when we talk about regular graduation. And this would be of 12th graders, not cohort. I used to use cohort. I lost points before because the reader said, oh no, the objective is based on 12th grade graduation with regular, not 9th to 12th grade cohort. I learned my lesson. And the rigorous is based on, the 12th graders, the same 12th graders that got the regular. Well, how many of them also completed a program of rigorous secondary school program of study? Okay. So expect to lose points on the regular and need on regular high school graduation for 12th graders, and possibly also the student to counselor ratio. Okay. That's one where you'll have to drill, and be very, very, when you talk to your target schools, just don't go what's on the website. Find out truly how many are full-time, and if they're not being shared with the middle school or the elementary school, if you're rural, and also what percentage of their time are they spending, just like your advisors would be, on college, career, and financial aid information or enrollment services. And so you might have to manipulate that table and state what your definition is. Individuals who are spend more than a certain percentage of their time and effort. Otherwise, you may lose points there because, I think it's 473, I think, is the national rate. I got to check it. So you have to show that you're doing higher than 473 or 478. You can't use the recommended. You can use as more, you think that's bad, look how much higher than we are than the recommended 250. But to use that as your initial answer, you'll lose points. Thanks,
Okay,
Teresa,
Lisa.
for sharing that.
Okay, I've added it.
Okay, got a couple more questions. How do you state one more data that is reported by the school so that it doesn't sound made up, i.e. when the school fills out a survey that we created to get data on? Well, it's not made up, right? You just state results from a talent search project developed survey provided to target school teachers or something to that effect. I think I have better wording, but it's not made up. I mean, you probably said something that you produced yourself or that you developed. So we put project developed survey of target school counselors, target project led focus group. And sometimes when we get to the last part of the question, we talk about, because it's in the wording, the issues and problems faced by homeless and foster care youth. That's where sometimes if I'm existing, I say, as per the current or incumbent project director, the issues faced by the students at the target schools that they have worked with include the following, blah, 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 blah. Right, Teresa? I mean,
Yep.
yeah, you just,
Yeah.
you,
And another one is based on one of the ones that I tend to use as well is based on interviews with target school counselors or target school
Mhm,
principals or target
mhm,
school teachers. So
correct.
that's another one that it doesn't sound like it's made up or anything. It's really is something that we've done, is interview them to get feedback.
And so you can use project developed surveys, and also project led focus groups. And according to the incumbent talent search director, according to the lead advisor for talent search, these are the issues that the students they've worked with in the past or are working with currently have that are in the foster care or homeless, or the issues that they see that the school is not providing. That's perfectly fine. What you can't say is, um, oh, the homeless students at the target school suffer the following issues, XYZ. That's why you need talent search. Says who? Says who. It needs to be tied into whether it's an external survey or a project developed survey, or the talent search director said this, or the person at the Boys and Girls Club, the educational specialist at the Boys and Girls Club, or the target school lead counselor. It's almost like you're a reporter. You're not writing an editorial. You're writing a report like for the newspaper where you have to have a source, even if it's your own source. Okay. Thank you all so much. This was really great. I hope this was helpful. Let us know, please. The recordings for all of these sessions are on our YouTube channel. Please subscribe there. I'll be posting something similar to what we talked about today, and also a little bit of a toolkit or a slide deck that maybe you can customize to kind of share with your administration there. Remember, you want to get to the House of Representatives. Remember, we're working for low income and potential first generation college students and graduates. That's the wording. And be hopeful. I still feel in my gut, I've been more right than wrong, and I hope it really pans out this time as well. So please stay in touch. We're going to be doing some more grant writing workshops this summer. We're going to do it a little differently. We're going to do it on what's the word that I can't say, Donna or Leah? You're going to laugh at me, Teresa. I can't say it. I'm going to do it, but I can't say it.
Asynchronous?
There you go. I can't say it. Just like I can't say communion very well. I got to get some speech therapy. We're going to do it on your pace. We're going to figure something out so that you can get it in bits and pieces and work along with it, and also pop up and do some live, office hours and things like that. So Teresa, that's what we're going to try to do. So please stay in touch, and I wish you all well. Have a great rest of your week. See you next week. Thanks, Teresa. Thanks,
All right.
Donna.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Leah. Thanks, everybody. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to practice so I can say that. Okay, so let's stop the recording, or we already did, I think, or let's stop.